Hi, this is Sam from the Danger Planet. I'm joined today by Doug from the Danger Planet and by Badfo Haku and Landon, aka Popedarpa from the Badfo Haku channel. And today we're going to be talking about the 10 Thunders. We're going to be rating each master on the tier list from S to D, and then we're going to be talking about some of the versatiles and out of keyword hires you can have in this faction. So follow along, and we hope you learned something.
And if you disagree, yell at us in the comments.
And we're going to get right into it this second. Starting with Jakob Lynch is trash. Not actually. He's probably C tier. Not a fan of this master. Never really have been. I've never seen him perform well at anything. If there's probably anything that gets into D tier in 10 Thunders, he might be one of them. But ultimately, I feel like that's a pretty low bar, and one of the things that Lynch can always do is just get good cards in hand, and that will enable a lot of the beaters you see in 10 Thunders, as well as some other potential models like his totem, and it'll never be too bad. It'll always be there as something you can do, but ultimately it's just kind of meh overall.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with D. I mean, I just think it's his even when he's doing the thing he's supposed to do, it's just so unimpressive. I mean, it like he has some ability to sculpt your hand, but if you're hiring a bunch of out of keyword versatile beaters, you could just hire them with a master who supports them better, like Mei Fang too. I'm not impressed by this guy.
All right, here's why you're both wrong. Stunning an entire enemy team in an AoE for a 4 is really good. And I don't think he's like towards the top of our tier list, but I'll just point out that Haku's completely lying when he says he's never seen this guy perform, because I perform pretty regularly with him towards the beginning of the edition. And I know he was there for all those events that I won. So where do I put him now? C is probably right now in the context of Burns, but I think he used to be a B tier master. Mostly because AoE stun is still good. Having access to an obey with Huggy is incredibly amazing. Like, Huggy's just a great model that you can only play if you're playing one of the two Lynches, right? And the reason why we probably are ranking this Lynch as low as we are is only because we're going to rank the other Lynch much higher, I'm guessing. So, credit where credit's due, I guess. He can still nuke things pretty hard with Succumb to Darkness when playing a reasonable amount of keyword. He still has the AoE stunned, which is really good. Like, the thing that always made this master weak in some pools is just that he's kind of fragile, and that definitely hasn't changed. But I think he's okay. He's not trash.
So not trash is the word of the Pope.
Yeah, not trash.
Fair enough. I don't disagree with what any of you guys have said, which is kind of funny because I'm kind of on the middle of the fence. When I was doing my research and kind of my homework for the episode, Lynch 1 was one of the masters where I was like, I really don't know where this guy would land. I think my gut tells me that he's on the back of the bus of the C tier, like low C tier, basically, for most of the reasons that you guys said. I think, unfortunately, this is another example of a master that was reasonable, but there's a lot of better stuff going around right now, especially after Burns being released. I have hopes that maybe part of his tool set or his kit set might become more relevant with GG3, which is what I was thinking about when I was like writing down. I have here like a bullet note that says maybe GG3 helps this guy, but I think back of the bus on C or maybe top of D is basically where I land, to be
Well, the
honest.
problem is that I don't really know that he's a model that gets any better contextually with objectives versus like the other version of him. The only thing that really makes him better or worse is how easy it is to put brilliance tokens on your opponent, which maybe Soul Battery finds a home if you decide to play Lynch 1 ever again. And whether or not stunned is incredibly important on a couple of key models. Like, this guy actually loves to see riders just because riders take maybe one turn not stunned and then are just stunned the rest of the game, unless your opponent brought condition removal.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I think we kind of all agree back of the bus on C ish, maybe
Yeah.
top of D, something like that.
Yeah,
Oh.
he definitely got. I mean, you are right. I very early M3E, he got to see some good play. I think part of that was not knowing how good some of the other masters were, but he definitely stun was even stronger back then. Now it's just accessed by more people. Condition removal is a little bit more common also because of that. Yeah, he got pushed down a lot, I think. So we'll go on to Lynch 2, who Landon rightly correctly said is higher up. I'm a little sad this isn't a picture of Huggy, because that's the real master, but I would almost put it in an S, but the only reason I don't is because it is very specific. I think he's more specific in play pools than most like all-in kill masters are, and sometimes just loses if your opponent has enough henchmen with or hard to wound that you don't have good kill targets when you all in on a Huggy turn 1. But even if that doesn't completely go off, Huggy's just a disgusting model. You can still do a lot of different plays. He's still strong, even without the alpha going off completely or even not being attempted at all. He can still definitely see play. So I think he's a solid A. That's about it. He's just a good model. Huggy's amazing.
Higher than the original Lynch, but for me, it's got to still be D. I just not impressed. I find that, if you have anything that counters demise, he just doesn't do anything. His activations without Huggy are pretty unimpressive. Don't love him.
That's savage.
You're missing the part where you say you're joking.
I'm not
Landon
saying
got
that
stun
yet.
locked hard right there.
Okay. Well, I mean, you're wrong. It's fine. People can be wrong sometimes, but no, I think A is about right. B might be something I could be argued into just because I think there are matchups that you don't want to see, and that he does tend to rely on a lot of out of keyword even still with the new title. But the new title does a lot of good things that just kind of make him work a bit better. And a 3 AP Huggy is just degenerate in so many ways. So I've had any number of complaints of people just complaining that I bring a list with 3 masters in it just because I have Huggy with the upgrade Lynch and then hire like a McCabe or something to just kind of round it out. So I don't know. It's very good. Obey is just such a versatile action. And I'd like to say he's one of the best Obey masters in the game just because having plus flips to your Obey really helps TN burden. But anywho, I don't really feel too much need to harp on it, but card advantage is good, and he's got some of the best card advantage. So
what, top of A,
Yeah.
low S?
A seems fine. I would never put him in S. He's got way too many bad matchups for S.
Yeah.
Like you see hard to wound, and he's just a very sad panda.
Yeah, or a sad demon, as it would be. So is that the word of the Pope?
Yeah.
I would say, I mean, I really like Lynch too. I'm really excited to try him out. I actually just got this crew on Monday, so I'm certainly going to try some reps with him. I don't think he's D. I don't think he's C. I don't think he's B. I think he's solidly in the A tier. The anti-demise stuff is a little worrying for me. I don't know. I don't think he's an S tier master. I would say he's solidly middle top of A. He's really strong. He's good.
I think you're harping a little too much on anti-demise tech. Like, firstly, nothing says you have to just play Huggy like an idiot and run it in and get him killed, right? Like,
Yeah, that's fair.
secondly, Huggy was still a really good model when he was 2 AP and didn't even have the demise ability in Lynch 1, right? Like, he's still an amazing model regardless of whether or not he comes back to life when he's killed. Because like Incorporeal, a bonus action to heal for a metric, fuck ton, and stones makes him hard to kill to begin with, to the point where you don't even really like use his demise ability in a lot of games. At least I find that people just kill Lynch 1 first and then kill Huggy if they kill Huggy at all. So like the ability to ignore the demise and kill Huggy before you kill Lynch is like less relevant than I think you're making it out to be.
Well, I would, my thought on that, I don't disagree with you. I get what you're saying 100%. My thought on it is that there's often a lot of different ways to play Obey Masters, and especially Lynch 2, I think there's a lot of different types of play styles. Probably only a couple of them that could be successful at a tournament level, but I've definitely seen a couple of different folks with very different perspectives on this fine gentleman here. Yours is probably one of the more correct ones, given that you've got tons of reps and success with them. But you know, I've seen a lot of different playstyles with it, and I think depending on that playstyle, the exposure to anti-demise tech can vary depending on whether or not you're just trying to use him as a nuclear bomb or trying to play, you know, like smart with him. You know,
Yeah. But I guess my only second point on that is like most anti-demise tech doesn't come on like really beefy models, and you can usually just like kill those.
the only
Like
thing
how
I
you
can
one
think
shot the
of,
charm order.
the only thing I can think of that is really, really annoying would be Yanlo 2's ability to, however he pleases, give out Manos' upgrade and put it on whatever. That's the only ability that I can see would be really a big problem from an anti-demise standpoint.
Yeah,
But,
I guess that's fair.
yeah, and like unfortunately, Yanlo 2 is a very popular grandpa these days. So
See, I think that cuts both ways though, just because Yanlo 2 absolutely hates seeing like severe damage or damage of 6, and this crew just does that really well. So I don't think Yanlo 2 comes out on top of that matchup. Maybe
yeah.
Yanlo 1, but not Yanlo 2.
OG grandpa. All right, fair enough. I agree with what you're saying. You know, I don't think what you're saying is wrong, but I definitely have my perspective on it. So
Yeah, I've seen the Pope top too many tournaments with this and win too many games with this, and I've played against it, and I hate it to ever put it lower than A. Honestly, it can be a monster.
I think it's solidly an
Especially
A.
if you're allowed to. The anti-demise even goes further away, and even hard to wound isn't as relevant a thing when you are allow double masters, and you can bring in McCabe 2 and precise. And then it just
Dude,
starts
McCabe
getting
2 is actually just disgusting with the crew
yeah.
because like the downside of Know the Warrior from McCabe 2, which I guess we'll talk about later, is just that you get bad cards, and Lynch doesn't mind having bad cards.
Yeah.
But
So
we'll talk about that
especially in
then.
double masters, he's a monster with a lot less downsides. Getting
The
closer
man's
to
a
S.
monster.
But yeah, we're gonna move on to Asami now, who I do think is almost actually trash. Again, I'm so hesitant to actually put people in the D tier who I don't think completely deserve it. But I have never actually seen Asami do anything. I just will put her. I put her below Lynch 1 for sure. The summons are always cool. The concepts has always been cool. The models are really cool, but they just feel like they do worse in Asami, and she doesn't do much for the crew at all. I feel like whenever I see her on the board, so not a fan. Never really been a fan. Low C, very low C.
Yeah, I mean, she's a summoner. She's been hit by all the GG2, nerfs to summoners. And then there's her summoning was already balanced around her summons not sticking around. And now, even while they stick around, they don't do much. So I'd say D. Yeah.
Wrong. Definitely a B tier master. If Yanlo 2 didn't exist, she'd probably be the best symbols runner in the faction. So I can't give her less than B for that. The only reason you haven't seen me play her more is because I just never put together her models. Like I played her on Vassal, is like my third master that I played for a lot of like GG0, GG1. Like she's very incredibly fast. Amano is an amazing like flanker, probably the best flanker in the game if you ask me. Like better than Manos. And so I don't know. I like her. She's very fast. She can hire whatever the hell she wants because twisting tendrils is a really good action. Like being able to do that 3 times a turn or 2 times in a summon is really nice. And Obsidian Oni are good sources of damage, right? She also can like trickyly do certain schemes. Like even without the strategy thing, like your summons were always doing schemes anyways, as opposed to strategies. So that much really hasn't changed. I mean, summoning Tengu for strategies was really nice, don't get me wrong, but like that was a much rarer play. You usually just get like Ama to run your strats.
Plus, you have in keyword Tengu. Like that's great.
Yeah, like Ama and a Tengu usually runs most strats if you can just like bog them up with Oni or whatever you hired out of keyword. Like, don't get me wrong, she absolutely doesn't function if you just hire her keyword, right? Like, if you only played her keyword, I would say she was C or D, right? But you never do that. I think she'd be.
Is that the word
Definitely
of the Pope?
better than the old Lynch. Yeah.
So my feeling on her is that she sits somewhere in the middle of either C or D tier. I don't have a ton of reps with her, but I've also not been as incentivized to play her as some of the other shinier toys in 10 Thunders. I just feel like her general power level is lower. and I don't think summoners are as good anymore. In my mind, she's probably, you know, low C, high D, but that's more from a ignorant Ten Thunders player than someone like Landon who has shitloads of reps on this faction. So
Yeah, I'll err a little bit towards Landon. I don't think I'm willing to put her in B. Mostly because I have actually watched a couple of your games on Vassal. I don't know. She never impresses me. I'll admit Alma is a monster, but the rest of her crew, I don't know how much she turns it on by just being a model.
Why
that
does her
pushes
henchman
people.
not have a bonus action?
Because she has 2 henchmen, and the one you're talking about doesn't exist.
Oh shit. Okay, that's fascinating.
Why does Reaching Chandril have a gun on it?
Because it's already a ridiculously good support action.
Okay, well there you go. Yeah, I'll put her at high C. I'm not quite gonna let her break into B because I think, I mean, Ten Thunders is gonna look weird. I think, tier list wise, but
I'm
jumping
okay
in,
with high C, to be honest, in post Burns, but there's no way I would let you put her in D.
yeah.
High C is pretty good. I remember drinking it after school.
Asami 2, I am tempted to put in D. I'm gonna
Give in to your temptations.
yeah. This model is actually trash. This is one of the reasons I didn't want to put Asami 1 into D is because I just knew this one was coming up. I don't know what she does as a unit. The Dimension Tear stuff is like cool looking, I guess. I don't know. It's just so bad. It's everything she does seems counterintuitive and doesn't synergize well at all. I can't see her do things. I'm not impressed.
Yeah, D for Dogwater. Someone explained to me what this model actually freaking does. It's so hard to make rifts, and they go away as soon as you use them. And like you have to jump through so many hoops to do her thing, and the payoff isn't that impressive. And she still has her fairly bad keyword, but you have to actually pay full freight for all of them you want. She sucks.
Yeah, if you wanted me to explain what she does, well, you look at Mei Fang's card, right?
Mhm.
And then you realize this is way worse than that, but it's the same play pattern. So one thing that she really does is like let you move all of your Oni up the board quickly. But like this is a master that really had a game plan, and then they decided to errata it before like it really hit the tables. And I think that like emergency errata they did on this card really just put the nail in the coffin as far as like having any competitive viability.
What was the
Um,
errata?
so there's 2 things they did. Firstly, Wrath of the Chemon didn't used to be once per turn, and you'd be like, oh, but Landon, how can you do a bonus action more than once per turn on your master? Well, your henchman Amenozaku could get that to go off another time. She lets you take another action. And the second thing is that the possession trigger on Spiritual Invasion didn't used to be enemy only. So you used to be able to just like do some Matryoshka shit with like a Huckster and drop your double activation Joragumos in your opponent's face turn 1. They decided that might be a little bit of an NPE, and I don't know that they're wrong about that, but getting rid of that really just like got rid of the only thing this master had going for it. So yeah, D for Dogwater. It
is
forces
that
you to
your
play a lot of
final?
a bad keyword to begin with. It makes like I will say that if you are playing this model, like the 6-stone yokai that come in her box, like she's really good with those. She makes those actually score 1,000,000 points before you lose.
Before
So
you
if
lose.
you're going with that route, like you might be trying to just like rat your opponent and play an 8-point game. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. So I think you'll have success with her doing that if you're going to do anything. But if you ever have to fight with this master, you've lost the game. And that's why I don't think she's very good in the current environment to just like put a little ribbon on why we're putting her in trash tier. It's the current gaining grounds. There's a lot of fighting for objectives. And if that was not true, if you're playing like some weird symbols, spread them out, martyrs pool with a million different schemes that require your opponent to like use AP, like then she could be okay. But I think that's like her ideal scenario being like the 7th pick in that sort of lineup. So
being like
That's why she's
almost
C
the
tier.
worst pick. All right, is that the word of the Pope?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought a lot about this, and the specific thing that I thought about was which master I hate more, Molly, the title version of Molly, or the title version of this master. And I think the answer is that they're both
Oh my god.
absolutely awful. Yeah, totally D tier. All the reasons everybody said. I own this model and never plan on playing it, nor putting it together, nor painting it. So unless they really change something. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
All right. Well, onwards to McCabe,
Burp,
the
burp,
once
burp, burp.
shining beacon of this faction. Just by how annoying he was. Now I think got power crept probably to B. I might see arguments for still putting him in A. He's just solid. His crew is solid. The upgrades he hands out allows him to be, versatile in what he want him to do. But largely it's, Rough Riders score points. He holds the center and slows people, and it's just good stuff. His crew is just good stuff, which allows him to be pretty good. Used to be really good, but I think he just got power crept where that good stuff just doesn't compete with the great stuff currently in play.
Yeah, I just think he's way too finicky. There's too much like setting things up and then having to like keep like very close track of who's got what and who's positioned where and order of activation stuff. I've just never been impressed when I've seen him. I'd put him in D.
Are you putting every 10 Thunders model in D?
Absolutely not. I really resent that. I think that I'm taking this as seriously as everyone else, and you guys should respect my ratings, even if you don't agree with them.
You're gonna be very angry when we get to Gremlins.
I'm calling this preemptive revenge, you motherfuckers.
All right.
Sam, you know they say never tier list out of spite.
Yeah. I think it's C tier below Asami. Honestly, I think
Wow.
everything that McCabe 1 is like good at, I think Asami 1 does just a little bit better. Which is to say that if you're going for like that scheming oriented pool, like I don't know what you're smoking when you're saying his keyword is high. He's got like one good modeling keyword, and that's Desper. Like if you're gonna tell me that like fucking ruffians are good models, or that Sadir is something that you get excited over just kind of looking at this guy, I'm gonna give you another like look. Like Rough Riders are okay, but you got to realize they're still like easily one-shottable models with a willpower of 4. Like I'm definitely not impressed by Rough Riders. They're something I'll take to fill out points, but they're never a reason I'm playing McCabe. So no, I don't think his keyword's particularly good. I don't think this version of him plays well enough to like justify playing him keyword agnostic. Like he's also just weirdly squishy at like 10 wounds with a demise ability to turn into a way worse model. No, definitely see it the best.
Hmm.
Is that the word of the Pope?
Yeah.
Wild. That's crazy. I would put him in mid B, honestly. And then that's not like a trolley mid B. That's like a legit mid B tier. I've enjoyed playing him as a symbols master out of 10 Thunders. I agree that he's probably gotten a little less shiny now that Burns has hit, which is funny because we keep saying that about so many of the different masters, right? I mean, I guess it makes sense they doubled the amount of potential masters in the game with Burns, but I do think he's gotten a lot less shiny. I put him in B though. Still, I agree with both sides of this argument, but for me, solid middle tier B probably, especially if you're going to a tournament where you need a symbols master. So.
Yeah. Huh. I'll have to think about this for a second. I'm almost debating. Yeah, you know what? Fine, I'll do it. I'll trust Landon's word just a little bit. I'm
Yeah,
not
I
gonna
mean,
put him below
you gotta
Asami
realize
because
that
I really don't agree with that.
even if you do take the good model in this keyword like Desper Leroux, right? You have to realize that in this version, he's still like a defense 5, willpower 5, move 5 model with no defensive tech besides stones, right? He just dies like everything in this keyword. Like
I really do love Desper though.
and
by
in
love,
like
I mean I
the more
despise that
schemy
model.
gaining grounds where hucksters are actually models worth hiring, maybe he's good, but like there's just not enough schemes that hucksters are good at for him to be any better than C right now, in my opinion. Like you
Yeah.
can play hucksters for detonate and breakthrough, and that's it.
So you make a really good point, Landon. I do think that the strength of him in this form and taking his keyword on this title is very dependent on how good hucksters are at the time that you're making that selection. Because those are probably, you're never hiring rough reins, right? Like for pretty much any reason. So that leaves you with hucksters and rough riders and Sadir and Desper most of the time, right? So in my opinion, he's as good as hucksters are, and if hucksters are bad, which they're messa right now, like, probably not the
Yeah.
best.
I mean, like the other problem I have is that there's just not a good strategy that hucksters participate in right now. Like you can have good pools where it's like, all right, it's breakthrough detonate, I will play hucksters in this, right? But then like hucksters aren't great at turf. They're like better at turf than they are at any other strategy, weirdly, because they're trash at ley lines because you can't, jump while you have the ball. Like maybe you can just run and throw the ball to them, but like they still have to stand near the enemy at that point in time. They can't really do symbols because you have to spend an AP jumping to the symbol, spend an AP walking to the symbol, if like at the ideal, and then spend your third AP from like a fast upgrade, I guess, to pick up a symbol. And then you have a huckster with your upgrade in the middle of the enemy crew, and you have to dig up a second upgrade after they just murder this thing. Because he is also not going to be able to immediately like go and back alley afterwards, because unless they, somehow put their symbol right next to blocking terrain for some weird reason, the huckster's just going to be like standing in the middle of bumfuck nowhere after he picks up the symbol, looking for his next piece of blocking to jump to and not finding one. And then you've got like break the line, where he doesn't really play break the line very well at all, at least not with my understanding of how you play break the line. So I just kind of left without a strategy that's very good for them.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
all right. Well, we'll jump on to McCabe 2. McCabe 2, I definitely think is better than McCabe 1. I'm not sure if I put him in A tier. So I'm going to hesitate and put him at high B at the moment. I think he just got way better at, bogging down the center line. He's a great second master for that kind of reason. Yeah, his extended reach, 2-inch attack, it's pretty good. Crack that whip, good trigger as well. So I'm a pretty big fan of this guy. The TN burden you put on people, sorry, not TN burden. The pseudo like +1 stat kind of you're giving to your crew can just be like monstrous, and it's such a huge advantage, especially against like specific kill crews we know who need to beat you by 1, or even if they commit hard resources to tying you. Now sometimes they just can't, and you can actually have essentially stat 7 defense models. It's amazing, and that pays off huge. And I think that almost puts it in. I think I'll let Landon talk me into A or B eventually, but let's go to Sam. Where are you putting this guy?
I resent that. You don't know where I'm putting him. You don't. You think you do, but you don't. I think he's a lot better than regular McCabe. I've been very impressed with his minus aura thing. The last tournament I was at, he basically just tanked for a while because that stupid aura, and he had the mask, I believe, the one that's defensive. And I was just like, I had to kill him because he was in the middle of everything, and he has extended reach. And it took, I did kill him eventually. It took a lot of resources, and I was playing a pretty busted crew. So, I think that, like, yeah, he has a lot of cool stuff to recommend him. He's vulnerable to being stunned. He really hates being stunned. He can clear other conditions off himself, but obviously he can't clear stunned because it's trigger. All that said, D. No. He's. I'll be done with this joke. He's in B. And for reference, Lynch 2 is in A. Lynch Asami. I would say Asami is probably Asami 2 is in D. Asami 1 is in high A. Lynch 1. Lynch 1 is in mid low, or sorry, Asami 1 is in high C, Lynch 1 is in like mid low C, and McCabe 1 is low B, high C, and this guy is high B. That's my actual ratings.
All right. Firstly, I want you guys to like edit in, the whip crack sound, crack the whip. That'd be cool, I think. Just to get a little
Bold
like
of you
spice
to
on
assume
that.
that
Someone says
wouldn't
McCabe.
occur every 5 minutes or every time someone said a McCabe.
Yeah, I think that would be the best. Every time someone says McCabe, you get the whip crap.
Agreed.
But
only
anyways,
if you're referencing McCabe too, obviously.
Perhaps.
McCabe 1
he has a
gets got the
bullwhip
sad
and a bullwhip,
trombone.
so Sad trombone. It wasn't very sad before. Now it's sad though. But anyways, actually talking about the model, I think he is like the best of the worst, which is to say that like he always feels like he's a fine choice, but he never feels like he's the best choice. Certain matchups pending. So like I like him as the tippy top of B tier. If we put anybody in B tier, I think it goes behind McCabe too. But I think for the reason that like he doesn't do anything that is potentially like best in class other than like not or other than eating attacks, right? Which is something that's inherently defensive, passive, and doesn't score points. I think he gets, top of B tier for me.
That's all true, but I think that more than most masters, he has the ability to basically make your opponent attack him because it's so disruptive and annoying having him in the middle of your shit.
So like here's the two things I'm gonna like say to really kind of like give an idea of why McCabe 2 is good and why McCabe 2 is not the best. So the best thing that McCabe 2 does is obviously cursed objects, which gives you that extra defense to try and cheat, which is invalidated by a handful of things, right? If you're out of cards, having better stats usually doesn't mean a lot. The reason why that's not too much of a big deal is that you have a lot of card draw models in keyword if you're playing in keyword, but more importantly, you usually have the trinket that gives you Know the Warrior, which says if you have focus, every time you cheat, draw a card. So long as your turn pose duel with an opponent. So condition removal that just removes your focus really puts a screw on that plan. With his willpower 5, if you do that from more than 5 inches away, he's still willpower 5. So anything that kind of like deals with him from a distance invalidates half of his shtick. And if you can keep focus off him, that invalidates the other half of the shtick that kind of gets it going. So if you can piece together an answer to one of the two parts, or just, have stat 7 versus willpower, I don't think he's as annoying to deal with as people might make out. Like the counterpoint is that if you just have a lot of card draw from his regular keyword, you can try and counteract not having Know the Warrior active, but then you're taking some of his crappier keyword models and trying to keep them around scrap, which is at odds with their very mobile shtick that they have. So that was always a problem I had with McCabe 1 when I was trying to play him with his keyword, is that, always making sure you get the card draw off your stuff isn't really something you can guarantee past like turn 1. So Corpse Gear helps that out a lot, don't get me wrong. But it can just be kind of awkward when you turn into a weird bubble crew just because you need cards to keep your master alive. But he's definitely good. Being able to grab precise fixes a lot of weird matchups that Thunders just has. So
yeah,
like
precise
don't reach
on a
for him on
min
occasion.
3.
Yeah, like
That's
and he's
like
also just
seriously precise.
probably the best master hire in faction. Like maybe the only master worth hiring out of keyword. People might say, "Oh, it's Misaki," but like no, it's McCabe. I don't think you usually want Misaki out of keyword. So yeah, for that reason, I think he's high B.
Is that the word of the Pope?
Yep.
I would put her at the very tail end of, or sorry, I would put Mr. McCabe at the very tail end of A. I think when I look at it, he is, by the definition of what we're calling A, which is playable in most pools. I believe that he is playable in most pools. He's probably not the best. So, I agree with what people are saying, but I would put him at the back end of A. I've seen too many games out of him where he's just been really, really impressive. Are there masters that do particular things better than him? Yeah, probably. But is he a solid choice into most pools and never a bad option? Also, yeah, probably. So I think I'd put him, tail end of A for that reason. I think almost any other A tier master is in front of him, but I would put him at the back end of A.
That's not.
I think it's hard for me to put him in A with how bad his keyword is.
Right, but 10 Thunders has insane versatiles. So like,
and I do think he's
that
better in 10 Thunders.
Is the most slanderous thing you could possibly say on this episode. I don't know where you got that opinion, but that is actually to me.
All right. Well, I think with that, I'm just gonna move on to Mei Fang. Let's keep this train rolling. Mei Fang, one, I'm not a fan of her. I'm not a fan of her in Arcanist. I think she's worse in 10 Thunders. I'll actually put her behind McCabe. Nah, at least from the Brad the Rails is always like a good ability to just have in your keyword. So I'll still give her a higher C, but her keyword isn't great in this form of her, and Ride the Rails goes far. You know what? I talked myself out of it. No, she's better. I really don't like her keyword in 10 Thunders, and I don't think it's good enough to justify playing over most other masters in the faction. So I'm pretty sure low C is where I want, mostly because she doesn't have good ways of getting scrap to turn on Ride the Rails in this form of her.
Do you want to put her in D maybe?
Honestly, I could if Landon gives me the go ahead, I could be talked into it. But
Nah, I wouldn't put her in D. I wouldn't put her in
Go
D.
ahead,
I'd put her in
D.
C. I'd put her in C. I mean, obviously, this is another one who's affected by the fact that like, when are you ever declaring Mei Fang 1? If you like have already declared the keyword, why would you take Mei Fang 1?
Yeah.
But like I don't know. I feel like there's a Ride the Rails is a pretty powerful ability. It does require setup, but she sets it up a lot. But like I play Foundry models with Ride the Rails in Trixie a lot because I really like Survivors and Sparks, and I think that they're so powerful when you are dropping scrap that like the real only limit is how much scrap you can drop, and you can drop a lot of scrap with her keyword, and you can do a lot. I don't know. I think she has certain powerful plays. I would agree that C, because her powerful plays are pretty telegraphed. Like it's not hard to tell what she's about to do to you. And not that hard to plan for it, but she can just like drop a lot of steel on you from a long way away. So I wouldn't put her in D. I would put her in C. I would even put her above Asami in C. Probably below Lynch, because when Lynch is like on plan A, he's just running around scoring points and being a speed 7 trample master, and handing out fast and all that crap. So he's like actually sort of doing stuff even when it's not that impressive. Whereas Mei Fang can have some very unimpressive activations, but I think it's not super hard to set up very good activations for her where she's just jumping around killing things. So yeah, I'd put her C between McCabe and Asami.
Actually, D tier, you have my permission. This master is not good. So like in your worst case scenario, this master actually just feeds your opponent resources. Like playing in an Everborn, they just bring like a Widow Weaver and suddenly you're just giving them scrap to summon, right? And like in the best case
Well, that's
scenario,
why you
you're
need
usually
Rockhopper.
just running into things that actively counter your stuff. And the answer that you usually have to do in order to like A, play your gimmick, and B, protect your gimmick is to like willpower 4 enforcers that both have low wound counts that just get one shot. So like without Soulstone Cash to protect those models, this actually trash. Like I could see Arcanist Mei Fang making C tier, but I could not see 10 Thunders Mei Fang making C tier.
That's savage.
I mean, I'm a savage guy.
I think it's right. I honestly think it's right. I think you're overestimating how good this crew puts out scrap in 10 Thunders as well, because of what Landon just said. Like, the models go forward and then just die.
And if you don't take these fragile enforcers to try and like bring your gimmick, and even if they go off and your opponent just interacts with you and gets rid of your, scrap gimmick, like this crew just does not work if you don't have Ride the Rails. It has nothing to offer in that instance, like that you couldn't just get out of another crew that does not telegraph a game plan, that is not easily interacted with by your opponent. Like, yeah, I don't. The only thing I can have positive to say about this model is that it has stat 6 Breath of Fire.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you putting Thunder's Masters in D tier where they belong.
Damn, dude. Some salty gremlin right there.
Where did 10 Thunders touch you?
Yeah, man.
I'm just to be honest, I'm just doing it. I'm just doing it because I know it will bother you. I have no actual animus for the faction. They're not rezzers or anything.
I do.
Those damn Malifaux players. Malifaux would be great if it wasn't for them. All right, is that the word of the Pope?
Yeah.
Okay. I think she's top of D, bottom of C. For a lot of the reasons that everybody else was talking about. I think if you want this playstyle in this faction, Misaki 1 is just better. I like Misaki 1 a heck of a lot more. She's like, she's D, top of D, bottom of C. She's bad.
Yeah. And now to go on to the most polarizing second master ever, and really emphasizes the why would you play Mei Fang 1. Mei Fang 2's, I still think S tier probably in 10 Thunders. You can't hire Hoff 2 in it, which is very sad for you double masters player. But regardless
You're
of that,
a degenerate, Haku.
Mei Fang 2, guaranteed ping damage. The shielding actually allows most of these models now to survive multiple hits. Like you'd be surprised at how much shielded 1 turns on the crew, especially because they have armor. So it's just delicious. Healing on her thing, fast focus on her models. Again, you can do the bomb drops with Metal Gammon, which are all of a sudden real models you can take in the crew. Rock Hopper becomes harder to kill. It is still very sad you can't take Arcane Reservoir in this crew or give Soulstone usage to others, but I don't actually do that in my Arcanist crew at all, except for to get to the +1 hand size using a Rail Worker. I think in 10 Thunders, you probably just see a few more of those Foundry Key models that I don't hire as much, which is probably just more Rail Workers. Disgustingly good models. And yeah, the whole crew just turns on with Mei Fang title, like a ridiculous amount. She'll probably be low S, high A, just because of who the other masters in this faction are, but I still think she probably breaches enough to get up there.
Yeah, I would put her in high A. I mean, I don't know. She's obviously like crazy strong. She's going to be, spoiler alert, big S in Arcanist. I think the loss of the Arcanist upgrades is significant enough for her that it changes her tier. But yeah, she's stupid good. Holy crap. She makes your crew just never, ever, ever die and like do a bunch of ping damage. And then a fast rail golem teleports into your face and like smacks it off. Yeah, she's super good. This is exactly what this crew needs, is this type of master.
Yeah, to emphasize the point, it's really the range late track scrap markers, honestly, just massively huge, and obviously making a gammon so you get more scrap marker further up the board, because it'll make 1 when it ends its turn and when it dies, and every turn it doesn't die. So it's just inordinately more resources than Mei Fang 1.
I think this only makes it to A tier for me in this faction, for the point that you still bring a lot of weirdly one-shottable models. They are significantly less one-shottable in this version, right? They're still like oddly squishy. You still have like tech that you're kind of just like say to your opponent, hey, bring this, and my crew kind of falls apart a bit. That being said, she definitely has like the strength in this version to like play well, but the same problem she has in Arcanist is a little bit worse in Thunders, is that she has a lot of TNs and you don't really have good ways to fix that. Like, at least in Arcanist, I don't know if you ever play the Mech Rider or you'd ever consider it, but I think that's like a good pick for this like crew, that you just don't have a familiar like model to kind of slot in. And I just think she's a lot less flexible than her Arcanist counterpart. So I've got some reps in with her. I do like her. I do think she's A, but I don't know that she makes it to S for me, at least in this faction.
Is that the word of the Pope?
That's what I would say on it.
Okay. So I've played her a bunch at this point out of Arcanists, actually. I probably have like 9 or 10 games with her, soloing her in Arcanists. Mostly in our metas, we only do single master. So my experience with her has really primarily been as a single master. I think she's S tier in this faction for sure. Maybe not the top of S, but I think she deserves to at least ride that bus to work. Ride that rail to work. Yeah, 100%. I think she's, it could be argued that she's not the most powerful master in the faction for sure. Just from what I've seen her be able to do, her keyword is so like, it's great. I love it. A question I have for you, Haku, is I've been using survivors a lot versus rail workers, and I've really liked them. Actually, the survivor is usually the guy on the Arcanist side that I put the Arcane Reservoir upgrade onto. What's the reasoning?
The reason I like rail workers a lot more than survivors is I'm not the biggest fan of survivors attacks overall, and I'm a huge fan of rail worker support that is able to be turned on. Obviously, it's better with Hoffman because you can throw Hoffman forward with Pneumatic Toss, which I just think is a disgustingly good ability. And it really turns on the vent steam and the scrap markers that are on the board. So with Armor 1 hard to kill, this guy is actually just a severe threat walking around and pneumatic tossing people. He can throw them off symbols, and it just at 135 it's just a pretty amazing damage track at stat 5 targeting move. I mean, most of the time you're equal statted to them, if not sometimes against specific like big tanky models. Sometimes you're even higher statted than them. And anything that gets staggered increases how much of a stat advantage you have for a 135. And it's only a 135 if you're not popping them into event steam, or you're not popping them into a pit trap marker that's also a scrap marker. And so I really, really like what this model turns on for just how disruptive you can be to the enemy team, as well as when in doubt, you can always target your own models to move them around the board as well. And a move 4 place is really strong. So
Yeah,
a
I'm
lot
a
of the
big
time,
fan
I
of it.
just place pneumatic toss a guy exactly 4 inches away from me, charge him, and then place him again 4 or 5 inches away from me now. And I just launched Metal Golem, who got fasted, shielded up the board, or a Gammon or something.
Yeah, the fact that it's a melee action and can therefore be done after a charge is a big, big, big deal, because it means you don't lose the mobility on your, move 4 rail worker while you're helping the rest of your crew move up.
Yeah, I really love them. I understand the Survivor. For me though, Survivor's only real plus is if you need to be a bit more schemy or strat oriented. Magnetism is just a good bonus action to move them. Also, obviously, they're move 5 inherently. So as long as you're not like fighting and you just want a model that's a bit more, survivable and can move around the map doing things, I understand Survivors, but most of the
Well,
time I
survivors
like
are also
just
being size 1 is kind of a big deal.
that's fair. That is fair. But yeah, that's my argument there. Us Arcanist players who are in love with Mei Fang will keep her an S. I really don't actually take more than one upgrade, which is hand size by 1. And Landon very well may be right. That extra card to help hit TNs and to hit sometimes you want specific suits for like Rob Harbor getting a Soulstone or whatever is always nice. But I think she still makes it an S tier, especially because it's not like 10 Thunders upgrades are trash. So we're going to move on to Misaki now, who I think is in an interesting spot right now. I'm not... I've always been a big fan of her just being able to do symbols, because the popping in and out of shadow markers means she's a great strat runner for symbols in particular. That being said, it's gotten much worse. Summoning got worse, so you're no longer, hiring the summon engine as much. So overall, I think she just got a decent amount worse in power creep. That being said, I still think she's really solid in what she does, and she'll never be bad at it. So I'm perfectly fine putting her in a fine B. You can only go so wrong with a stat 7 range 2 attack, while being able to pop up most places on a board.
Yeah, I mean, I think B is totally respectable for her. Like, I think that Misaki doesn't really need you to. She doesn't ask a lot from you. She has good stats. She has good maneuverability, so you don't need to plot out her activation several turns in advance, and you don't need to cheat that often. Or when you do, you're cheating second. And I think that she's just very low demand. And she has a pretty reasonable keyword, although maybe Landon thinks I'm totally wrong on that. But I mean, Ototo kind of sucks, but he's like a model attacks you have to pay. But like, I like Torikage. I think they're pretty good. Yeah, I think Misaki just like she's very reliable at doing the thing that she wants to do. It's very difficult for your opponent to stop you from doing it. People can like sell out to try to get rid of shadow markers, but you do have multiple ways to generate them or count as having them with like Shang. So yeah, I like Misaki and B. I mean, I could be talked into C, but I don't think I could be talked into A. But I think B below McCabe is probably correct.
If Misaki wasn't like a master on crack, I'd put her into D into dog water, because I really do hate her keyword that much. So I actually think she's fine at B though, just because she is that good of a master. Like before McCabe 2, this was the master you just hire out of keyword. I do think that like she's probably the 6th of 8 masters in the faction if I were to just rate the 8 masters. So like it's weird because I don't think she's like that good or a master that I would play very often, or one that I really like all that much in general, to be honest. But I do think she's actually worth playing if you want to have her on like your bench, but she's never like the first or second or third master you reach for. But like if you just want something that plays generally starting out and you're like, I just want something that I can always play and it will always do okay, like she fulfills that McCabe 2 role. I just think McCabe 2 fulfills that role a bit better than she does. So that's kind of where I sit on her.
Is that the word of the Pope?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a soft spot for Misaki because this is the master that I actually learned how to play Malifaux on before I immediately went to Rezzers, basically. I think what Haku said has a lot of wisdom. There's a floor on how bad a stat 7 range 2 lippy model can be. But I do think where she's at on the tier list right now is correct. I think she's probably middle of B or B behind McCabe 2. I think that's fair. I think she's where she needs to be, honestly.
All right. Well, with that, we'll just move on to Misaki 2, who is remarkably worse. I don't think she's D tier, mainly because Stat 7 Obey is always perfectly fine as a master and can allow you to do some cool things. Also, her, burying targets is kind of fun with Twisting Pass. That being said, I mean, if you want obeys, why are you not just playing Lynch 2? So kind of like Misaki, but unlike Lynch 2, she doesn't have a follow-up and her keyword is actual dog water, as Landon said. So it's just remarkably worse. I'll put her at like bottom of C. I really don't understand like why people play this master. It's just worse versions of so much worse versions of that master because the keyword is a joke.
Yeah, she's Drek, absolutely, dude. I'm sorry, and I mean, like, I'm kind of enjoying the fact that this is this is the right faction to pick to put people in D because 10 Thunders has a lot of crappy masters, even though they have some very good ones. She's the third best Obey master in the faction. That is not a place you want to be. She the only time I've seen her do well is because the opponent, Doug, you might know this story, massively screwed up and basically handed the game to her by not reading her card. But she is generally like, what do you do? Like she's an obey master, but the stuff she obeys is bad. Because her keyword is bad.
It's like that meme from where the person's being peer reviewed, and it's like, what is it that you say you do here?
So what is it that you say? What you do here is like attack people with your weird, like take a lot of walk actions, attack people with your crappy ranged attack, and then possibly obey them? Question mark.
All right.
Yep.
Here's where you're wrong. You guys have said this thing a lot where you call her an obey master. She's absolutely not an obey master. That's like the fourth worst action on her card, and she only has 4 actions on her card. So that being said, like, is what she actually does that good? I don't know. Ink tip dart to just like make your opponent discard 3 cards might be okay if you're playing some sort of like weird list. I don't think it's usually all that good, but like it's a source of card advantage.
Min 1 you're stoning for.
You don't stone for it. You get it
It's
built in if they're near a
probably
shadow
bad,
marker.
but
And it's
You know what,
not
actually,
built in once per turn, it's built in always. So you're just
That's
having
fair.
that built in to draw 3 cards and make them pitch 3 cards. I guess you don't always draw 3 cards, but usually. So like you have that going for you.
So it's normally
Twisting
2.
Paths is actually a pretty good scoring tool if you want to try and use it. And Hidden Allegiances is broken AF in certain pools. That being said, I think I still have to stick with her in like C tier. I would love to put her in D tier just because of how much I absolutely fucking hate Ototo. And the rest of her keyword.
Damn.
But I don't think that you have to play a ton of it. The reason why I joke and say that she's actually not an obey master and the obey is the worst action on her card is that she lacks literally all of the tools that make obey like playable. She doesn't have any way to actually draw to hit her TN of 7. She doesn't have any way to ignore concealment, or I mean, she ignores concealment, but like negatives. In that, like And then she doesn't have any way to extend her range or like move. So like Zoraida gets the range extension, Huggy gets placed a million places by Lynch, like Misaki walks 5 to get back in range to obey something.
She does have reposition on her bonus, but yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, but that's the one thing on your card that you don't get built-in suits for.
Why not? You just need to target a model within a shadow marker and it's built in. You'd still get it.
Nope, you know what? Fair. You're right. You just have to target an enemy model that's already within 3 of a shadow marker.
Yes.
So fair.
How do you feel about Twisting Paths, Landon?
Twisting Paths is the best action on her card. Like Inked Dart's the second one.
Yeah, Twisting Paths is definitely what you're playing her for. The problem
is you can't
you
Twisting Path 3 times in activation.
Yeah.
Like, you just can't do that. And it's really weirdly easy to accidentally just not position turn 1 so that you can use the trigger on it, because the target must have concealment. So if you just deploy wrong, it doesn't work.
And I will admit, one of the other reasons I'm not putting her in D is that even though the rest of her keyword stretch, she did pick up Jin, which allows the Twisting Path unbury your guy forward to be pretty good because you're getting a pass.
Yeah, I've been trying to like figure out an opportunity to drop that in the conversation. Like we definitely need to evaluate both Misakis in the context of them getting one of the best enforcers in Malifaux Burns.
Yeah, Jin
for sure.
has a
And
hell of a
that's
drug.
one of the reasons why I think that Misaki 1 remains in B tier and I don't drop her to C. But like, I don't think it's enough to bring Misaki 2 out of C tier. It's definitely enough to keep her out of D tier for me, but hot damn if it isn't close.
Misaki 1 doesn't really need Jin as much because she doesn't rely on having last activation nearly as much as most other aggressive keywords.
She often goes really aggressively first, dumps her hand, and then tries to refill it. It's like kind of the opposite, actually, in my experience.
So Jin doesn't help Misaki 1 that much. Misaki 2, she needs it, I think, to function, and it's great, but it's still like, sure, I don't like her. The rest of the keyword still sucks. It's not helping you attack, which is kind of what Misaki 2 wants to do. It wants to maybe bomb you with somebody. I guess you could try hard scheme Misaki 2, but yeah.
I think we all
Honestly,
kind of agree.
Misaki 2 plays a lot like a worse Shenlong 1 to me, which segues nicely into Shenlong 1.
Yeah, I mean, I think we agree on Misaki 2 here. Like, she's kind of meh, right?
Shenlong 1. Good lord, this guy used to be super annoying to play against. I don't feel like he's that anymore. Definitely got power crept a decent amount. A little, not a little bit.
I think the word you're looking for is nerfed.
Yeah, sure. That's
not power crept only, just nerfed.
Did pick up 4 wins Golem, which is an interesting one. But overall, I don't actually really. I think I put him behind Misaki 1. I think he does different things, so I think it's a little harder for me to evaluate like where exactly in B I'd want him to put. I just don't think he's good enough to go into A anymore. Yeah, maybe
plus
even
with the nerf to Fuhatsu, which was one of the key models that he was able to manipulate with the movements, shenanigans, and all the stuff he did. Right, like. Yeah. That was kind of tied to Shenlong 1 was the strength of Fuhatsu pre-nerf, right?
Yeah. Fuhatsu dropping down is definitely enough to knock, for me at least, Shenlong into B. But I do think he's B, and I think he's maybe even above Misaki in B because he's very flexible. He like absolutely kicks the crap out of people. You do not want to get near him. I remember I was talking to you about him and about what you thought about him a few months ago because I was running him in the Content Creators Invitational, and you said what you really didn't like about him was that he was boring, which I kind of get because the stuff that is powerful about him is powerful in like kind of a very straightforward like make attack actions and take models off the table type way. And he also has this unpack that's like very like you always do it the same way with pushing him forward and stacking focus. But I actually like him a lot. I really enjoyed playing him, and I do see that if I played him regularly, I would get extremely bored of him. And because I tend to not play masters that are super killy personally, it's like a novel experience for me. But yeah, I mean, if you try to mess with this guy, he will just put you in the dirt. He is really killy. And I think he has a reasonable like cross section of models in his keyword that he can, accomplish various different roles with. Like you've got, some decent scheme runners. I'm jury's out on the golem for me because 10 stones is a lot of stones. But it is a very interesting model. So I don't know. I'm happy with him in B.
The golem is unironically the only thing keeping him out of D tier for me. Like honestly, if the wing golem was the model, he'd be D tier trash. Maybe
That's a
that's
hot take.
unfair.
That is
but
unfair.
The reason being is honestly just that in the context of the faction as a whole, he just doesn't have a strong reason to be played anymore. Like everything he does is kind of accomplished either equivalently or better by a Malifaux Burns Master. And he just has a lot of accentuated problems that other masters don't have, in that you have a lot of one-shottable models. All of your models rely on you just having better cards than your opponent, but in a post-Malifaux Burns meta, your opponents just draw a lot more cards or just have better hands with tools that you just don't have access to in Shenlong. And like, especially on early alphas, if people can get into your models before you even generate chi, like you just die. Try playing Shenlong with a keyword on wedge. Like, holy shit, you will not believe how fast you get tabled. And like,
Take your
as far
inner
as, like,
enlightenment to the loser bracket.
as far as like being a master that just kills things, like we're not hurting for that in this faction at all. You have Huggy, you have McCabe 2, you have Misaki 1, like even I mean Mei Fang is literally, or Mei Fang Wang is just literally worse Shenlong. So like if he is D tier, he's better than Shen or Mei Fang. But I think Wing Golem is honestly enough of a niche to keep him in C tier for me, because Wing Golem fixes one of the weaknesses that Thunders has as a faction, which is just being shot. People can point and say, oh, but you have stealth on an upgrade, but that's on minions only. There's a 2-stone tax on top of a model that you're already paying like prime dash for, right? So like 8 stones for a huckster to have a huckster with stealth is not where you ideally want to sit, right? Like that's just bad. So to just further explain, like your Wandering River Monks are 5 wounds. They get one shot by like basically anything if you aren't keeping a severe in hand to make them not die. And you only have so many severes in hand with your 6 cards with nearly no extra cards until Sensei U starts punching things. If you're punching your own guys, you're putting damage on your own guys for the opponent with your models that basically have no defenses or ways to reduce damage at all, which is why you always brought Fuhatsu. But now Fuhatsu is not a game plan. Fuhatsu is like an accessory, because he's no longer has stones, so your opponent just has to do math to kill him, which is still hard math with armor 1 hard to wound, but like it gets a lot easier when you just put 2 wounds on him with Sensei U, because 7 wounds armor 1 hard to wound is a lot easier to just punch through.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then yeah, I think that the previous way you played Shenlong in like a competitive sense was strictly speaking a Fuhatsu-oriented game plan. Otherwise, you were just playing a worse version of someone else. And now he's not even the best at that game plan after that game plan got trashed into the toilet. So like, that's why I would put him in D tier if not for the 4 Winds Golem, which is an amazing model.
And that's the word of the Pope.
That's all I have to
So
say.
where do you put him? B or C?
I would put him C tier below McCabe or Asami.
Oof, below Asami. That's a
I
dreadful
actually
fate.
like Asami. Like I would have pushed to put her in B tier, so that's probably coloring my analysis there. So take that as you will.
I think that's reasonable, man. I agree with a lot of the stuff you're saying. When Fuhatsu got less shiny and cool to bring to the table,
Like keep
Shenlong
in
Wang
mind
suffered
that the
so
whole
badly.
I have stat 7 chi gimmick is just McCabe's cursed objects, but with a cost added onto it.
It's just McCabe's cursed objects, but with extra steps.
Yeah.
Dude, I
That's
agree with
fair.
you. I agree with everything you said. I used to love old Fuhatsu. It was like my favorite model ever because it was obviously absurd. And I was looking at Shenlong because I was like, well, this is just awesomer Fuhatsu. And then once that nerf came down, I was a lot less excited to look at this variant of the master. So
Yeah,
I
should be
totally
clear that like I like Fuhatsu better as a model post nerf, but as a game plan, he's absolutely terrible.
agreed. Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, and I actually agree with the spot that he's in. I think the only other thing you could do is maybe move him behind Lynch 1, but generally there, I think, is where I would put him.
I don't think
He's
I would
probably
put
ahead
him
of Lynch
behind.
1 realistically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with where he is.
All right, we'll move on to Shenlong 2. I don't even know where to start with this guy. I literally don't. I've seen him played a couple times, and I don't know what he's supposed to do. The few games I watched of him, it looked like he did nothing and achieved nothing, and the crew just died, as Landon kind of talked about. And you can't kill him back as easily as Shenlong 1 can kill him back on. So maybe there's some movement tech, or he sets up his crew in a unique way that's better, but largely I just see him as just a model that's not even really feels like master tier. It just feels weak to me. I don't know, low C. I see somewhere. I'm not sure where. I really have like no way to truly evaluate this model without someone trying to convince me he does something, because watching him just feels like he watches his crew die and then he's like there.
I mean, I think he does something. I think what he does is he makes it like, if you're trying to take the interact action, he's really, really good at letting his crew do that and taking the interact action as much as you want. Now, my issue with that is that the current GG is not one where whoever takes the interact action more and in the right place wins. There's a lot more going on than that. There's a lot more stuff to do with positioning and your model surviving and dealing damage, and he doesn't really help with any of that. I can see him in some future hypothetical GG being just really nasty because you use your chi defensively, so you keep your crew alive, and he's just basically scooting your dudes around and they're interacting and there's not really anything you can do about it. And he can hand up butterfly jump, and so I can see that. But right now, the world we're living in, like, even if he's doing his whole thing of like handing out upgrades and letting your dudes interact, it's not really going to win you the game on its own, and he doesn't do anything else. So I would say that where you have him, I know I would put him above Misaki too, because I think she's like just straight
Oh, that's
garbage.
fair.
But
That's fair.
but I think that he's this with an option theoretically on being much better in a future GG.
So I actually put him above Shenlong 1, because this guy has a much more clear game plan to me right now than I guess Shenlong 1 will, when you take it in the context of his crew and everything else. I need to play more games with him, to be honest. I've only gotten one game in with him to kind of verify some of my initial thoughts on him. But here are some like neat things that you just have to like think of forward proofing. As you said, like in GGs that are a bit more tightly knit to the chest where interacts are good, like recover evidence or plant explosives. Like if either of those come back, he's actually got like a reasonable niche to kind of fill, I think. But in the current GG, we don't really have anything like that. Most of the interact-based strategies require you to spread out, which means that expert educator just doesn't work. He also has like the Parker problem for me, where like Parker people complain that Parker 2's ability doesn't work, even though Parker 2's ability does work. But like Shenlong just actually has abilities that literally do not function, because he does not change the fact that you can only concentrate once per turn like the original title does. So you just like have triggers to concentrate that just all of a sudden can't be taken because they say concentrate, not gain focus. That pisses me off a bit. But otherwise, I do think he has a niche that could be filled one day.
Well,
I
it's
don't
once
think
per
it's good right
activation,
now.
right? Not once per turn.
Once per activation, I think. Yes, you are correct. I think.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're
but-
still, the
For
point
sure.
stands, but you just
Yeah.
said once per turn, and I just want to make sure.
Yeah, no,
people-
you're right. I believe you are correct. That's once per activation for concentrate. But the point is being that he has a built-in trigger on his melee attack to concentrate that you can only declare once unless you're doing the interact shtick. And that just feels bad, especially for like a new player who might not catch that the first time around. Just have to be like interrupted to be told, by the way, your ability doesn't work, and you're like, well, fudge nuggets.
Excuse me. Yeah, sorry.
That's like one of the things I hate most about playing any game, is that when I have to like interrupt a player to tell them that what they're doing is wrong because the rules are funny. Like I can't think of anything that would put off a player more from playing a game than those types of experiences. So like having that on model is just always like a big
Yeah,
oof.
there is no good reason he shouldn't have that
Training
whatever
grounds.
training
Yeah,
does. Yeah.
I don't know why he doesn't have it, but anyways, like there's that oof. There's a couple of other feel bads that you might get caught by, like if you great teacher and then put out the fermented river upgrade to a minion they actually get negative flips instead of positive flips, which is a bad thing because they turn all positives to negatives. But you solve that simply by handing out that upgrade to a enforcer or higher. But still, like, if that happens, oof. But I think he has a lot of good gimmicks that like could potentially find niche play, like being able to build in suits for any monk, like pretty neat when we got the golem and Sensei U. Being able to hand out the ability to ignore, effectively become an ungentlemanly affair man with the river upgrade to like give Sensei U stat 9 positive flips on his ranged attack, pretty good. So like I could easily see him in a better GG moving up to like B or A, but like right now he's C.
Yeah.
That's the complete story.
Where in C would
And-
you have him?
Like I said, I think above Shenlong 1, just because like I think he has a more easily defined game plan where if you can like scout the pool where it's like this is what's good in this pool, and I think this master does that, like you can play him. Whereas I don't really see like a defined like razor case for Shenlong 1 or any of the masters below him.
Okay.
My only
So we're the Pope.
counterpoint to that, at least, quick statement, was I still think his crew dies, and unlike Shenlong 1, that model still does something after your crew dies.
See, like I just think you only take a handful of the models from Monk that don't actually die, and you're okay with that, right?
Yeah.
Like Sensei U and Wind Golem, and you don't actually need to take like the other models anymore, I don't think.
Yeah, that might be true.
And that might also be true of Shenlong 1, but I think that Shenlong 1 just only has a place really as like beatstick dude.
See,
Where Shenlong 2 is a bit more versatile.
I just wish like the River's Wrath ram trigger healed the model he was drawing a line of sight through, and not just always himself. And then I think he would actually be pretty good. But yeah.
I mean, I think he's.
I mean, the crew doesn't need a lot of extra healing on top of Low River Monks and Low River Style. Like,
I don't know. We'll see.
he's got enough of that.
Yeah, I mean, you can heal, you can heal the golem. You're not going to be healing a Wandering River Monk. Those things die.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like the monks that are going forward, that are doing your interacting, that you're sending out to, be able to take all these interact actions, are going to be the primary targets they kill. And once they kill, you can't do anything. So like,
See,
Yeah, but
like,
I mean-
here's the problem with what you're saying. You're saying send out. I imagine if you're playing this guy, you're playing a very cagey pool that still requires interacts.
yeah,
Like, some weird, like, detonate charges, plant explosives, recover evidence type game.
yeah.
And
we'll
on
see what
top of
GG3
that-
looks like, I guess.
Exactly, right? Exactly what you two just said. We'll see what GG3 looks like. And I think this is a perfect example of a master whose power level fluctuates with the tournament pack that's currently being distributed. And if his tricks line up really well, then he could be potentially really strong from a scheming perspective. But if they don't line up, the guy's just kind of garbo, right?
Yeah, he's a
I
master
think
that
that's-
does something.
I think
and
that's
it's
where
just-
we all landed, basically, right?
Yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. The thing that he does is not a thing that the game is currently asking you to do.
Yeah.
100% agree. But the caveat of that and the flip side of that I find interesting is that when GG3 hits, collectively as a competitive community, we're going to be forced to reevaluate every master. And personally, I'm going to take the hardest look at the ones that were Garbo before and see if they flipped around, right? So I
this is the one
think
to
that's
keep the
interesting.
biggest eye out for, I think,
Yeah.
for sure.
I think
Yeah, one of them,
I
for
think
sure.
there are very obvious ones that could get better, like Shenlong. Whereas I don't think Mei Fang 1. Regardless of what GG3 looks like, that model's not getting better.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, like I'm really interested in like Shenlong 2 and like Zip 2, especially as masters who I think could improve tremendously if GG3 is asking you to do different things.
Yeah. All right. Is that all you wanted to say, Doug?
Yeah, that's all I got. I think you guys covered everything. I just wanted to drop that little pebble into the,
Yeah.
you know.
I think you're very right. And yeah, it's a very good point to make, especially on this master, especially on this one. Whereas that's what I was saying. Like at the moment, it doesn't feel like he does anything. But yeah, Yanlo 2 or 1. Yanlo 1, we went over him in Rezzers. He's still very good. I'll put him below Lynch right now just because I think Lynch does something cool, unique, and I don't even, I guess it's not really unique, but I think he does something potentially a bit stronger than Yanlo when he gets to do what he wants to do. Yanlo 1, I think, is obviously always going to still have the same problem. He's good in everything he does. He's not the current best, probably, but he is still a monster. I don't know much more. Watch our Rezer video. We go over more detail there, but I think he's perfectly fine in high A. Could you make an argument for S? Maybe. I don't really see it in 10 Thunders over Rezers, but yeah.
No, if we didn't put Yanlo 1 in S and Rezzers, we're not putting him in S and 10 Thunders. He's good. We all know why he's good. He doesn't change that much in between factions because his keyword is great, so he's not going to be hiring a bunch of versatiles. You can. I guess it's, he's not having access to like Grave Spirit's Touch. That matters more for Yanlo too. But yeah, I mean Yanlo, just watch our Rezer video. It's all still true for this guy. Sick of talking about him.
All right. Well, I'm not sick about talking about Yanlo. So Yanlo 1, I actually think drops down to B tier for Thunders. He's always been better in Rezzers than he has been in Thunders.
Spicy.
But the thing that makes it for me like where he was better in Rezzers than he is in Thunders, especially Yanlo 1, is that in Yanlo 1 you just had the option to flex into things like Valedictorian or Sloth and just play like a far more effective game plan. The replacement for Sloth, which is Sun Xiang, just doesn't work as well on the Thunders side as far as like Yanlo 1 is concerned, because you just don't have as strong of a need for focus on Yanlo 1 as you do on Yanlo 2, especially in those early turns. And your primary beater of Zamu is pretty much doesn't care about focus. The summoning changes also just like really hurt Yanlo 1 a lot more than any other model in this faction. Like even the hard summoner Asami like doesn't care about the changes as much as Yanlo 1 did. So like, and then also the amount of card pressure that just exists in the game, I think got increased. Kenshiro helps out a little bit with that, but like he doesn't actually refill your hand. So like as far as like having hard TNs and then having hard questions asked to you, like Yanlo 1 is one of the masters where I think you could unironically get executed with your opponent like not having to try all too hard, and like you wouldn't have even had to have made a mistake because like he has a lot of guard pressures in his crew, especially with all the nerfs that have hit him. So I just don't think in Thunders he gets enough tools to kind of like make up for not having the Whisper, make up for not having Valedictorian, make up for not having Sloth to like really justify A tier to stand alongside the other A tier master. So I want to drop him down to like B below Misaki, honestly.
If he's in B, he's in the top B.
I don't agree with that.
You know what? I actually, am I going to let Landon talk me into this? I might. I legitimately forgot you can't play Yanlo the way I play Yanlo in Rezzers. Because you're right. Without Sloth Rider, what am I doing with Yanlo 1 in 10 Thunders? It's so much more of a hit for him. Because my brain honestly was stuck on Yanlo 2, whose list doesn't change almost at all. It's just the upgrade. But for Yanlo 1, it really is the loss of Sloth, the loss of Dead or Valley. Because Asami just doesn't cut it really in most maps nowadays. As your main beater. So
he gets a lot better in the context that you can't even give him unrefuted because Training Ninja is living only. So yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know if it's below Misaki. I
think he used to be like A tier when you could play a Fuhatsu plan, but you can't do that anymore.
Yeah. Also, the summon draw cards plan used to allow building inside of his keyword was a lot better, and both of those got hard nerfed. You're right. He definitely dropped, I think, below A because of that.
Is the internet gonna come after us if we put him in B? Is that okay?
I don't think so. I don't think the internet really ever hated Yanlo 1 the way I hated Yanlo 1.
I mean, Yanlo 1 is still a monster in Rezzers. I think Landon brings up the greatest point, which is with
you're
the
boxed
summon
into
changes,
a more narrow build.
Yeah, with the summon changes, which allowed keyword to be better and obviously draw more cards with his rebuild corpse. Without that working the way it used to, he's not really a master in 10 Thunders that he can still potentially be in Rezzers with Rider Sloth or Valley Sloth.
Well, plus the loss of Fuhatsu, right? Like these two things are conflating with one another and creating this less than ideal scenario for the old man.
Yeah, because he no longer has the one model he can like really dedicate time to caring about and moving forward and killing things. I mean, Manos and Izamu are really his only ones now in Thunders.
So, like, just to kind of put a button on it, the thing that I think you ever play Yanlo 1 for right now, and I think it'll happen a lot more frequently once people start to kind of realize like what the weaknesses of Yanlo 2 are as far as like how you build against it, is that you just like are playing a list where you are playing into a matchup where you don't want to hire 2 dogs, right? Because that's a big tax. And when you don't want to hire 2 dogs, you're probably like looking for out of keyword grabs. And unlike what Doug said earlier, Thunders actually doesn't have like the best list of versatiles or out of keyword grabs, at least not that synergize with Yanlo 1 the way that like the Rezzers choices do.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's spot on. You
I
won me
also
over.
think I was thinking more like, because my heart belongs to pre-nerf Fuhatsu, I was thinking that, you know, that still existed, but yeah,
It
I will
does not.
temper that statement, admittedly. I agree with what you guys are saying. I think the old man falls in the back of B. It's rough to see that and kind of sad because I like playing Yanlo, especially as a Rezer player. But yeah, I think
I
he's
actually
either
take it as a victory. I fucking hated playing Yanlo
savage.
so much. Like, I actually only picked him up in GG1 because I was still mad about how good he was after his first set of nerfs. Like, I played
Yeah,
him out of
I don't
pure
know, man.
spite.
If you're putting him in B, I'd just put him higher, just because he does have
Yeah,
this like.
I'll put him above Misaki.
Yeah, he's still like, he doesn't have this versatility in his hiring, but he still just is a complete beast on the board when he's got his ascensions active. He still has an extremely strong hiring pool. He's a much stronger hiring pool than either of the other two people in B. And especially that matters a lot, given that, as we've said, the out of keyword and versatile hires in 10 Thunders are like not that impressive. And he just like, there's a floor on how bad he can be because, you know, he's still Yan Lo. Like, I
And
think
that
he's
floor
definitely
is
worse.
Tara 2, where you get kidnapped activation 1 and lose Yan Lo on the second activation of the game.
Yikes.
Or the first. Yeah.
Or just play a single model with Take the Head.
I think he's sandwiched in B where he should be. I think this is fair. I mean,
Yeah, you do
Noise-
have the Ashigaru route to go into, and I think that is what you do. But yeah. Yanlo 2, I don't have to say anything more about this. He's an easy S. He's above. He's currently one of potentially the strongest masters in the game. Landon's right. The only true counters are the masters who are very able easily to kill the dogs. I think if you can't do that, you're just hoping that they play him wrong and misposition Yanlo 2. And that's possible, and it happens, and you can lose the game off of it, but realistically, it's pretty hard. You have a lot of fixes to it if your dogs can't die, and most of the time they can't die.
Yeah, I'm done talking about this guy. Whatever. S, sure. Fuck this guy.
Nerf this guy, please.
I unironically still think this guy is fine. I think he's like a 56% win rate master, but like a really consistent 56%. But like, I think if this is the top, I'm okay with where the top is as far as like Yanlo 2. Like, I don't want to get into this argument again, but
Yeah, we've already done it. Listen to Rezer podcast.
I think he's good, but not in a way that's like super bad for the game.
I love Grandpa too. He's the man. I play him out of Rezzers, which is what I'll be trying to punish Sam with over and over again until they nerf him. But here I still think he's us as well.
Yeah. I think Land's forgetting he can be played in Rezzers, and that's more disgusting, but whatever. Whatever. Let's go talk about my most hated master in the game. I despise Youko with a burning passion. I think.
Look, you can't hate Youko 1 though. We're going over Youko 1 first,
oh no,
right?
I hate Youko 1 more than I hate Youko 2. Because Youko 2, I think, is a real model that can play the game and is kind of interesting. Youko 1 is just a negative play experience that's bad. And all you're doing is playing a bad master and making Malifaux unfun while doing so. I'll win the game, and I'll hate every second of it. I despise this master.
I knew certain people that literally do tabletop gaming just to inflict that upon themselves and other people. Like
This is the
they're
master for you, then. I'm
They're
going to
true
put her in
degenerate.
C. I could make perfectly fine arguments for D. I actually probably, you know what? I'll change my mind. She's worse than Mei Fang. I legitimately think this model is very bad. All the things it does is just makes your opponent play the game at a slightly lower power level, and that doesn't even work nearly as well as it did before Malifaux Burns than it does after. She got changed a little bit to be more consistent, and that was kind of nice. Honestly, those changes made her a little less degenerate and a little more into a playable model. That being said, it's still quite bad, I think, because it doesn't really advance her own game plan, and her keyword is weirdly good bad, in such a way that it doesn't feel like it meshes well together, at all. And I really do think it's just such a negative play.
Hey, there's nothing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with her keyword. It's weird that it only has 3 models in it, but
yeah. Well, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's her. That's Youko. She's
I think
ugh.
D is kind of harsh, but I would put her in C probably between Lynch and Shenlong. I think that I really appreciate that Weird keeps doing these cool masters that like aren't really trying to kill things and are instead trying to play this more like controlling game and debilitate people with conditions and control their activations. The problem is that I think they have a hard time balancing those, so you end up with models like Colette that basically just like your opponent just can't play the game against her properly because she just has so many layered defenses. They can't really take her out, and she can be anywhere on the board, and she has a lot of ability to disrupt. Or like Youko, who, as you said, like when Yoko is firing on all cylinders, what's happening is your opponent is like 10% worse at playing the game, and then they just kill her because she has to be real close to do all her stuff. So yeah, I think C's fine. I think that like she when her sort of theoretical ceiling is a very disrupted opponent, but the problem it's like when you play Magic, when you're playing a control deck in Magic, the problem is you can't counter every single spell your opponent casts, so you have to figure out what you can let through and like what stuff will actually kill you if you let it through. And with Youko, you can't stop them from doing everything, and if you let the wrong thing through, it's very easy to just like lose a bunch of models, including your master, and then not win the game anymore because your crew's dead. Bill's great, but who's better at hiring Bill is Hinamatsu.
Not even wrong.
That's actually pretty wrong. But this is actually a case where I'm going to say it's just the wrong GG for her. Like, I actually kind of like this model. It's just that when she finally got changed, it became a GG that I don't think she plays particularly well. I think she actually plays reasonably well in like center brawl oriented pools where like the points are in your crew, not behind your crew or in front of your crew, like recover evidence. To the point where like the thing that she's actually really good at is, to Longtin's point, an incredible negative play experience, but it's draining your opponent's hand and then throwing up challenge. You have 3 sources of challenge in the crew if you take the 2 upgrades, and you have it on models like Kunoichi who have disguised that get really annoying to hit, or like Bill who can just throw it 8 inches and then go charge across the board somewhere else. In between that and like silent control, your opponent just like has a lot of really bad choices to the point where like they might get 3 activations in a turn while Yoko's alive, and then the last 5 activations of their turn are just going to not do anything. So they have to like figure out what that's going to be. Like I think she's definitely C tier. I don't think I would ever put her in D tier because I think what she can do is like worth respecting. Like silent control is just such a good ability. The things that keep her down is that she doesn't have strong ways to reposition her. Like if 10 Thunders had a rider, I'd actually think she'd be pretty good, but like we still don't. Don't try and tell me Yasunori is A model or B a rider because he's neither of those things. But like the things that do annoy me about her is that after the terracotta change, she doesn't have a way to make pass tokens like her title does. Riddles in the Dark is actually okay. It's not the best thing on her card. The best thing on her card actually usually ends up just being the walk action because you need to fucking get somewhere. Which sounds weird.
That's the sign of a great master.
But like when she is in the shit, like using silent control, she has a very effective plan. And so I think if the GGs shake out to like one where you don't have to walk quite so much to your opponent's half, like she's perfectly content to stay back or like in the right amount of space to use riddles and just like try and ruin games. But yeah, you'll never play this model if you ever want to make friends. Like, just don't do that. She's not going to make you any friends.
He's played this model like 5 times against me.
You know what they say? Whoever takes the most walk actions wins.
Yeah.
That's what they say. They say that.
Who is they, Sam? Is they you?
Lucius 1 players.
Yeah, there's just one
Just one
player.
player.
Dude, I think she's a bad control master. That's my take on this. I hope that like Shenlong 2, there's a revitalization of like usability for her in GG3. But my take on her currently is that she's effectively an unimpressive control option. It's kind of my thought.
Yeah, so
Sure.
the only other reason I'd put her maybe at D is just the sheer fact that if you play against any keyword that has an inherent way to get a plus flip that's not focus, this crew just melts.
I don't agree with that.
I don't know.
Youko might melt, but this crew does not melt. Like, Yoko's the only one that actually relies on an egg flip defense.
Sure, but when she dies, the crew kind of becomes a lot worse.
The reason that you would not potentially be quite so fussed about that is just the, challenge stuff that I was talking about before, but that all requires a little bit to go off. So
Yeah.
there's that too.
And now she doesn't have the pass tokens to try to just own you with 6 pass tokens. Thank God.
I'll miss that.
Because that was hilariously stupid. And I don't want to talk about it because it's gone. So Youko 2. Youko 2 is actually just a good master. I'm surprised I don't see it played more, especially because I play a lot of crews that actually have high armor. Crews like Mei Fang or Hoffman, and I think perfectly good against those, especially having stealth. Obviously not as good against Mei Fang with stealth, but Slippery is obviously very strong. It's just what she can pull off as an actual ninja. She looks really cool. She's no longer just based around the simple fact that she needs you to not flip well or have inherent tech against her. She can actually plan around her own game plan instead of planning around a hopeful game plan. And that's so much better in my mind. That's a consistent master I'd be ever willing to play. And she does that. And her bonus action is pretty amazing if you just want kings. Starting with 2 pass tokens is just, oh my god, it's so broken. Pass tokens are so broken. And yeah, overall, I think this model, I shockingly should see more play. I think it's a bit more specific. I don't even think it's that much more specific schemes and strats. I think obviously being walk 6 and having some pretty decent defensive tech, which sometimes just forcing your opponent to go with 2 models before you go with your crew, allows her to be really strong. And I'm wondering how bold I am in putting her in A, but I think B is probably correct. But I'm going to slam her in A until Landon tells me why I'm wrong.
I would put her in B, but like high B. Like I would put her at the top of B. I like this model. I think she's cool. I think she does a lot. I think that a lot of the stuff she does is harder to pull off than it looks like it's going to be on her card. Like, she like she likes, handing out distracted, but unlike some of the other distracted masters, she doesn't just generate all the distracted you could possibly need herself. So, you need your models to be doing it. And I mean, her crew obviously hands out a bunch of distracted, but it's not free. It takes AP, takes guards. But she has good actions. I think that her melee attack is not something I see people do very often. Which is weird because it seems very strong, but like in games that I've played against her and in games that I've watched with her, she just doesn't make melee attacks very much, which is I think just a sign of how like cool the rest of the stuff on her card is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she seems fine. I think that what's keeping her out of A is because I do think there is something keeping her out of A. And what is keeping her out of A for me is the fact that like there's aside from Bill and Hinamatsu, there's like not much in her crew that is just like great models that you want to take every single time. One Kunoichi, sure. One Kunoichi. I like him better in Lynch though, because that combo is ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, I just think that like, she has there is stuff that she's not good at, but she's pretty tough. Like she's pretty durable between stealth and slippery. Like it's very hard to sort of lay hands on her. Which means that she can be very disruptive because she doesn't have to worry about hanging back.
When you were saying I had to talk you out of placing her somewhere, Longtin, I thought you were going to put her in S. Like, honestly, I could argue myself there, but
Yeah.
A is where I was going to originally put her. To your point, pass tokens are really good, and the reason why I probably just dropped Asami as a master as a whole is because Youko 2 just plays like I played Asami 1, but like with 2 pass tokens for free. I like to say this a lot, that out of activation movement is like the best thing in this game. And she does it for one of the lowest TNs I've ever seen on a model for a 4 as a tactical action. So you don't have to worry about like concealment or any of that jazz. The fact that you can only push the same model once per activation is a little sad, but you get the bonus of having like some gravy tacked on with some really good triggers and the willpower 13 duel for distracted that comes up sometimes. But like, part of my lament about where Malifaux Burns went as like a game for me is just how ridiculously consistent like good crews got. And Youko 2 is an example of a crew that got ridiculously consistent. You said 1 Kunoichi, but like sometimes I'll take 2. I always take at least 1 though, because you can only have so many turns where you cheat like 4 to 5 13s at your opponent before they just want to quit. And gather or information broker and a Kunoichi just definitely gets you there. Like towards the end of the turn, after you've passed out and you've pushed your models where they need to go, and your opponent just has no say left in the turn, like they actually have no say left in the turn, because you'll have like a stat 6 attack, you'll have like 3 fucking 13s to do whatever the hell you want, and you just play the game. And so long as you know where the black joker is, literally nothing your opponent does short of flipping a red will stop your game plan. And that just happens so many turn ones that like you lose 1 in every 50 games or something if you hit the right matchup, right? So like if you're playing Youko in the appropriate spaces, I don't think you lose. And for that reason, I think she's definitely at least A. I don't think I could ever be talked down to B. Like,
What do you think, she's the top of A then?
It's
that's a
possible
great
just because she's
question.
more consistent than Lynch.
Yeah,
right?
usually I look at like what my opponent's playing and just decide based on that if I'm playing Lynch or Youko, right? And sometimes I flip flop on which one I want right now. But like those are the 2 go-to masters I play right now. I either play Lynch or I play Youko, just because they're ridiculously consistent in their terms of output and card advantage, and just like being able to form a game plan that your opponent doesn't have say in. So like I honestly played them more than I play Yanlo too. And
Honestly,
like Yanlo 2 is just a little bit better because he's a little bit better at scoring his points. But these 2 masters just play the rest of the game so well that I think they're honestly bad for the game.
if Fuhatsu didn't get nerfed, or if 10 Thunders ever picks up like another really solid like henchman beater, I mean, being able to alpha with 2 pass tokens is
So
just
good.
ridiculous. Like I can't.
I mean, you already
stress-
get like usually 3 to 4 activations at the very end if you cheat for initiative, which you should. You have a Kunoichi and information broker. Like,
yeah. It's ridiculous the guaranteed card advantage you're going to have over your opponent, as well as potential 3 activations in a row over an opponent. Like it's I really
realistically,
the only
on
thing
certain deployments, it's more like 4, because like their last activation will be on a half of the board that you no longer care about.
yeah, I cannot I would easily put her in S if at all, if there was a better alpha delivery model in 10 Thunders than they currently have, which is honestly none. And that's the only reason I think Youko is kind of balanced. And
Yeah, you guys have
is
sold
good.
me on it. I think A.
Like you just can't be bad if you have 2 pass tokens, and then a
I
stat
think-
7 attack. That's potential min 4.
I think you put
Almost
her at
never
the
min
top
4,
of A,
but you know.
based on everything we're saying from a consistency standpoint.
Yeah,
I
sure.
think the fact
Yeah, she also just has a lot of weird incidental tech against a lot of things that are good. Like this model is one of the reasons why I don't think Karai 2 is quite as good, right? It's like
That she'd
just
teal.
like, oops, I'm in the keyword with Charm Warders, or like you just also randomly take a lot of Ruthless in your list already. So it's like, oh, you're playing Terrifying, cool, I guess. I don't care about that. You have the upgrades, you just turn off triggers for trigger-based crews. Like you just like have a game plan. You're not even taking this keyword so that you tech. You just randomly counter a bunch of shit too, which is always great.
Gather intel can target yourself, which is
Yeah.
stupid.
Get around disguised.
So you can get around disguise. You can get around. You can use her as a detonate dropper.
Just
Like
leave engagement. Yeah, the fact that she also just scores detonate really well with 2 pass tokens and a way to drop schemes without interacting is really nice.
yeah. The only way I can't talk myself into S on this model is Thunders really doesn't have that key model that I think if this was if this master was in any other faction, I think it'd be like almost an easy S.
I mean, I think like the combination of Bill Fuhatsu Hina is enough for me to be like, I have good models to alpha with.
Oh, for
Yeah,
sure.
Bill's a
Turn is
great alpha.
crazy.
Like, if you've got a bunch of pass tokens and a bunch of severes because you've been, tools for the jobbing and information brokering, like, yeah, Bill's great. Bill will make a mess.
It's just I still think they need one better.
I mean,
model.
if we had Valedictorian,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Like if you had
holy
Valley,
shit.
you had Dead Rider, you had.
No, I get you. We don't have broken Reser models. I mean, like, we'd have to be playing Resers for that.
Peacekeeper, I think would be amazing.
Yeah, if we had any good versatile models like all of these models we just talked about, then, it'd be in a better spot.
Yeah.
But it's already in a really good spot.
Yeah. And relying on Bill is definitely not bad.
So we kind of agreed top of A. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's interesting, actually. In my mind, I guess before we started talking, she would have never been in front of Lynch 2. And then, after this discussion,
So, like, here's the
I
thing
see
with,
it.
like,
I get
Lynch
it.
2. Lynch 2 usually ends up with an assortment of severes at the end of his turn, but he never guarantees that he has the 13. And so sometimes you just lose the card war. But like Youko 2, you always have a pair of 13s at any given time during a turn.
Also, you
And
can
I-
just put 3 mins on top of their deck sometimes.
I also think another important thing to think about, or at least, say, is that Lynch 2 has an Achilles heel that is kind of marketed and very easy to see.
Oh yeah.
Whereas on the
if you
flip
have
side,
a way to attack Lynch 2's willpower 4, like
yeah. And
the
then
rest
but
is
then
garbage.
but then the flip side of that, right? And the foil of that is that Youko 2 just has a bunch of good shit that, like, hey, the more you read it, the more text is on that card, So
Yeah. Like honestly, we talked about how putting out Distracted is hard for her, and I don't even disagree with that with the crew that I play. But like I put out maybe 2 to 3 Distracted a game, and like that's more Distracted than I needed that game. If Distracted's ever on an enemy model, that wasn't ever something I planned to do, it just happened. And
yeah, it was
sometimes
just
that just
a
kind of like
pleasant
ruins
mistake.
a turn.
Yeah. And it's also not even like hard to try to guarantee like 1 min for backstab. Because you can get the guaranteed one from Information Broker, and then you just got to find one somewhere else in your whole entire turn or crew, or previously handed out.
Yeah, Information Broker's usually when the Distracted comes out, where it's like, oh, someone's trying to kill Chio and failed. Like, oops, I guess they gained a Distracted now.
Yeah.
I think we agree on this. I think this is reasonable. So, or we're all just gonna say old Fuhatsu is the 3 best versatiles of all time.
No, he unfortunately
No.
he has gone to the happy hunting ground.
That is not true, but go on.
I guess
Old
it starts with
Fuhatsu
Haku.
has gone to the happy hunting ground.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I think
so-
Fuhatsu's still playable, completely playable.
Mr. Haku, what are your feelings on the versatile assortment?
For me, I always have to put Charm Warders first. I despise this model. It's super good, and sometimes it just wins games, especially against me with that bonus action. I don't know if I've ever not seen it deal 4 damage and just own me turn 1. But even without that, it obviously all around is a pretty amazing model. Jinx is really good. The card's good. I don't need to talk it. People know what the hell the card does now. I think for the second one, I wonder if I debate saying Sun Qiang at all. Whenever I
No.
see him, he's super annoying, but it's Pacific Cruise, so okay, yeah, fair, sure. I'll take the no. I will say Terracotta Warrior, even though I know Landon hates it. I love it. I think it's a good. I love drawing cards, and it doesn't really die.
That
And
one's respectable, even if I don't agree.
that's something I always look forward to. And I think the last one, they might not be amazing right now, but you got to give it to the potential of Hucksters to just be disgusting.
Yeah, let's go. I love Hucksters.
I think Hucksters. While sure they're not great in GG2, they're still pretty good in certain pools and can just be disgusting in certain pools. And I would not be surprised at all if we shift away from a kill meta to just having them be like GG1 or 0 again, where they're just disgusting models again.
So I don't like hucksters because we're specifically talking about out of keyword hires, and when they don't have McCabe's TN reduction, there's actually like a real card cost for secret passage, because what they need what, like 7, 8?
8.
It's a pretty significant card. I think my 3 would be Bill, because he's Bill. He's great. He's extremely durable. He's extremely killy. He punishes people. He doesn't really need that many resources out of your hand to punish people. Charm Warders, for pretty much the reasons you said. They have a lot of really cool tech. It's also funny when you could just sort of blow up someone's totem on the first activation. And I think I had a third one. I think the third one is, hang on. Oh, Kitty Dumont. Kitty Dumont's cool. She's extremely maneuverable. She makes the rest of your crew more maneuverable. She can scheme. She doesn't need a lot of cards to do her thing. Yeah, Kitty seems great.
I've certainly lost a game or two to Kitty Dumont.
Oh, right. Sun got nerfed. That's why he's no longer a good versatile model. You can't do the stupid thing anymore. Right.
Yes.
I was trying to remember.
Not only that, but he also doesn't hand out focus out of keyword anymore.
Yeah, I was trying to remember, like, why is he?
What was
why
the
is
stupid
Landon
thing
so
he
hard
did?
on him?
He used to heal a model when you pitched for his, or when you placed near him, and it didn't used to be once per turn. So like just taking a 2-stone upgrade for hard to kill and Sun Qiang meant you had a literally unkillable model so long as you had cards in hand. That was really good for some reason.
I forgot that got nerfed, and I'm like, why is Landon saying no? Wasn't that combo disgusting? Right, doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore. That'd be why. I'm actually really sad Sam went in front of me, because he kind of like took the models that I was going to say that I thought was going to be like an uncommon choice. But for me, 1 is Kitty, 2 is Bill, 3 is Fuhatsu. Like I just build so many lists around that core these days. Actually, no, replace Fuhatsu with Kunoichi, but Fuhatsu is like number 4.
Yeah, Tools for the Job is sick.
Yeah, Kunoichi I run in actually a lot of lists now as well. So yeah, it's a revised list. Kitty, Bill, Kunoichi. Because like I just build half my list with those models these days. Not like for lack of trying, but Tools is just really good on top of a model that just hands out 2 focus. Like those are usually 2 separate jobs that you have for models, and it does both, and that's really good. So then I guess since I'm starting from the bottom, Bill just is the quintessential tanky 10 Thunder model that doesn't exist in most keywords. So like you're looking for an out of keyword hire, it's usually Bill, because a lot of keywords in 10 Thunders just lack that consistent like rock piece that does damage and hold space on a board. And then like the reason why he's the best at it is because he also counter schemes / dick punches your opponent when they don't try to scheme with his heroic intervention, to the point like he can affect spaces on the board that he's not even on while holding space and killing models. So he's like probably my favorite model in the faction, honestly. And then lastly, Kitty is just good in a lot of game plans because, as I've mentioned, out of activation movement is good, card advantage is good. She's like the best support piece you could ever ask for. 10 stones is a bit of a price tag for it out of keyword, but like usually you can justify it because even after she's done supporting at move 6 in Corporeal with a bonus action to drop a scheme marker twice a game, she's really good at just scoring points after you're done unpacking. Like, she's good.
That's the word of the Pope.
That's it.
I would say mine are Charm Warder first, Bill second, and Kitty third. Maybe Bill and Kitty are kind of interchangeable, but those are the 3 for me, I would say.
I just want to point out, now that we've all picked our models, that every single one of us included a Qian Gong model in our list somewhere. And that's part of why I value Youko so highly compared to like maybe other people, if they were to remake this list, would trash talk her a bit more. Like her keyword is actually just solid gold aside from like 1 or 2 models.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean that's Kunoichi, Bill, and are obviously really strong, and then
Yeah.
Charm Mortars as well. It's
And
why
I think
it's why I
Shojo's
really like the
pretty
bands
good.
format, because I can just easily say Ki and Gong against every 10 Thunders player I play against.
Yeah.
That was our 10 Thunders tier list. I hope you all enjoyed it and found it informative. Do you think we're totally correct? Do you think we're way off base? Please yell at us in the comments. Let us know what you think we got wrong, what you think we missed, and what you think we were completely correct about, which should be all of it. Until next time, I'm Sam, and this is Danger Planet.